Hey everyone, welcome to Reddit Readout. Today we are checking out Confession. Story 1. I'm an estate agent and was forced to steal deposits from purchasers. Long time ago, but why not get it off my chest? 7 years ago, I was working for a well-known estate agent, UK, in London. The business had a slight reputation for being what I would call a typical estate agent, in that regular sleazy salesman tactics were paired with inexperienced estate agents, which left bad impressions on most who would deal with the company. Anyway, there was a scheme, which involved holding deposits from purchasers which were held by the company to secure a house once a buyer has agreed to purchase a home. Usually, this holding deposit is returned to the buyer once the transaction has completed. However, in this case, we were instructed to follow the following script. Buyer agrees to buy a property for, let's say, 500,000. 5,000 to 10,000 deposit is requested to be held in the estate agent's account as commitment to buy the property. The buyer is told that the deposit amount will come off the official purchase price and that we will deduct the deposit off of our fees so that the seller technically gets the deposit. The seller is only ever put forward an offer that is less the deposit amount, so in this instance 490,000. 490,000 goes on the contract and is sold this way, as technically the buyer doesn't pay any purchase tax on the 10,000. The sale completes, the seller gets 490,000, the buyer is none the wiser, and the estate agents keeps the 10,000 on top of the fee paid by the seller. We were disciplined if we did not agree this deposit scheme with every sale, and we were not given any incentive to partake in this illegal activity. The directors of the company benefited from this scam. Over the course of the 4 years that I worked there, the company must have taken in excess of 400,000 worth of these deposits. Thankfully, I've moved on to much greener pastures, but apparently the company is still partaking in this practice to date. Lesson to learn: if you are paying a deposit when you buy a property, make sure the seller knows directly from you what price you have agreed to pay. The middleman could be benefiting instead. Story 2. I used to move and rehind ex's drugs just for my entertainment. So yeah, I'll confess. After I got sober and knew my ex wouldn't think it was me taking or touching his shit anymore, I would move it to his different hiding places throughout the house. I used to crack up watching him go from one to another to another. It's evil, and doing stuff like that to a meth head could probably drive them permanently insane. Story 3. I am financially unstable right now and lying about it to my best friend. So I'm currently unemployed, and this whole summer I had planned to work and save up for college because I struggled a lot last semester and didn't want a repetition. So before I was unemployed, I had an agency job that was pretty steady at the time and decided to book a birthday holiday and a holiday with my best friend for her birthday. All of these are monthly installment payments, so at the time I booked it I was confident that I could make each installment, but now I'm unemployed, I've been struggling to pay for everything: rent, holidays, even basic food, and I've mentioned this to my best friend and I feel like she low-key resents me for it, and I've been avoiding plans with her because I'm so broke I can't even afford to go out with her, and she keeps wanting to go to places that I can't afford, and I feel like she thinks I'm avoiding her in general, but I'm just embarrassed to tell her of my financial situation because there was this other girl that couldn't make the last installment because of the kinda same reason as me. And my best friend was so angry, so I'm scared she's gonna be angry at me, and the installment date came by this month and I told her my dad is gonna send me some money and she told me she'd pay for my half, and when my dad sends me the money I'll give it to her, but the truth is my dad doesn't give two fucks about my financial situation. He's not sending me money, but I can't avoid her forever. What do I do? Story 4. I'm letting myself become a complete alcoholic again. I have been on a downward spiral since my wife left me in 2016. I even had a court-ordered hospital stay. Police picked me up. I grew up in the home of a rotten man. He is dead now. Hope it was a painful death. I really thought I could not go on and hit the bottom. Then my dog and best friend of 16 years died in my arms this past January. I'm so much deeper in depression now. I have PTSD from military service. It's ruined me. I won't kill myself, but I give up. I give up on life. 4 months now it's been work, then inside at home. No friends, No one. I can't escape my pain. I take 50 milligrams of THC daily and am on a ton of meds. Only helps a little. I've decided I'm going back into the bottle. Yes, I go to therapy every other week. Story 5. Did a bad thing while doing cocaine had to do with my friend's father. Like the title says. I snorted a 8-ball and was horny as can be and sucked off my friend's father who is 35 years older than me. Story 6. I put metal inside in the microwave when I was young. So when I was around 9 my mom went to work and left me alone with my dog for 2 hours. It was fairly normal until I was getting hungry. I knew how to make popcorn at the time so I got a bag from the box and poured it inside a metal bowl. I put it inside the microwave and called mom to see how long I make it. She didn't pick up though so I called my dad and he said 20 seconds. I said okay and I pressed start. I didn't know anything about metal and the microwave, but thankfully my dad said 20 seconds and because of that it didn't explode. If my mom picked up she would say like a minute and it would explode. I got the popcorn out of the microwave and I went on with life. Getting older I realized I had escaped a near-death experience. Story 7. I committed fraud to get noticed at my job and improve my resume. I used to have a side gig working at a fancy wine bar during my college years. This bar/restaurant was extremely focused on revenue above all else, and even went so far as to record how much in sales each server made each night. There weren't any tangible rewards for being the best salesperson, aside from managerial recognition, compliments, and sometimes a free glass of our house wine. Anyway, throughout my life I've always been driven by perfectionism and a longing to stand out, especially in professional situations. I'm also very lucky to have been born to parents who own and manage their own highly successful and independent financial consultancy business. Thus money has never been an object in my life. Even with this part-time job, I was mainly doing it for the addition to my LinkedIn timeline than the wages. This all compounded into me striving to be the top wine seller every shift. Our main selling objective was to sell bottles of wine for guests to take away as they leave the bar. At first I would use common sales tactics, having listened to a colossal amount of hours of sales training podcasts and reading books on influencing people. This worked, to an extent. But often I found that whatever I said to the customers, they simply weren't in the mood to buy wine after having spent a lot on a full meal and drinks. So to improve my sales figures, I told some white lies. I still can't decide if this was unethical or not. When I handed certain guests their check I would write on the back please buy a bottle of our house wine and leave this check on the table with your PayPal address written on it. I need to make more sales so as not to be fired and will reimburse you after my shift TYSM, smiley face, then left the bill and pen on the table, along with a $5 bill to show I was serious. Most of the time the guests hastily left the bar wineless, giving me a strange look. But some of them took pity on my self-fabricated situation and bought some wine, and true to my word, I reimbursed them. After a couple of months doing this routine, I left the job to focus more on my studies. I left with far less income than my colleagues, but with a reference letter stating that I was an incredibly skilled salesperson and the best the company's seen, which certainly helped in my future endeavors. Story 8. I lied on my resume and to my boss about my work history. So I've recently started my new job. It's at a pawn shop, let's label it Pawn Shop A. But I feel so dirty I feel like a criminal who has committed fraud. For a broader context, the past year I worked at a pawn shop in London. Upon returning to my hometown 2 months ago, I temporarily took up a part-time job at a pawn shop, call it Pawn Shop B, down the street from the one I'm currently working at. The thing is, in my CV I included that I worked at the one in London the past year but not that I had at the time been working at Pawn Shop B, as I had only been there a few weeks doing 18 hours a week. But in the interview I lied and said I didn't work there, out of fear that I would get rejected. Either for it being a conflict of interest or just being rejected for leaving a place after only having been there for a month. So I've stated my new job at Pawn Shop A and literally nobody has any idea that just a few weeks ago I worked at Pawn Shop B down the street. I just feel like such a rotten horrible person, I feel so guilty like a no-good criminal. And fuck am I scared of what legal action would get taken against me if they found out. Asterisk for context, I took on the new job at Pawn Shop A because the hours are very good, it's full-time 45 hours a week. I had no malicious intent, I'm just trying to do better to support myself and my girlfriend. But I know that doesn't justify that I'm a fraud and a liar. Story 9. In 6th grade I hawked a loogie in my teacher's tea and watched him drink it. In 6th grade I had a teacher that was such an asshole, the whole class hated him. He was one of those teachers that would always make you feel terrible and had an angry look on his face. He kinda looked like douchebag Chopper Rider with a ponytail. One day, my friends and I were messing around and led us up to getting detention for lunch. Our teacher made us sit the entire lunch with our heads down. I remember being so frustrated and wanted to get revenge on him since he was a total dick. Classmates were always afraid of him. I watched him sip his tea like a total douchebag and I had the idea to spit on his tea. I told my friends about it and we laughed so hard about the idea I had planned. So we waited. Once the teacher left, we stood up and I decided to spit a really nasty loogie on his Lipton green tea. My friends also decided to spit on the cup and we noticed it was too noticeable, so we got a piece of chalk from the chalkboard and stirred the spit until it blended in. Later on that day, I watched him drink the rest of his tea. I still remember that disgusting look on his face. I couldn't stop laughing internally. Story 10. I work in fast food. I used to tell customers that Wednesdays are our busiest day and recommended Wednesdays as the day to come in and order food. I'm off on Wednesdays. Sorry to all my co-workers. Story 11. I broke one of my bones on purpose to get out of going to school as a kid. When I, 16M, was 9, I really hated school. I would do anything in my power to get a day off, fake sick days, faking a high temperature, fake vomit and so on. I got away with this for so many years, but people were catching on and getting suspicious. We had a trampoline buried in the ground in our yard, and while I was on it one evening I had a thought, if I broke a bone, then I can't go to school for weeks. I was jumping really high, thinking how to do it, and I rotated my leg so I would land on my ankle and it would hit the metal frame and springs. I didn't think it was possible to feel that level of pain. Not just my leg, but all through my body. I landed on the side of my ankle and my whole leg literally cracked. I don't know how I didn't do more damage than I did, to be honest. Spent the whole night in hospital, and to my delight I was put in a full leg cast, thigh to ankle, and sent home the next evening. Funnily enough, it didn't even give me much time from school. I had 1 week of glorious breakfast in bed, video games, and terrible daytime TV, and then I had to use crutches for weeks on end at school with people constantly trying to draw on my cast. I feel bad about this. I've never confessed and I don't think I can now after so many years. I don't know why I thought it was a good idea to blatantly hurt myself for this kind of thing. I'm almost worried for myself. I was and still might be a little bit psychotic. Edit, people who are genuinely concerned for my welfare, I'm okay. I ended up being homeschooled about a year after this. I just had some awful teachers and the school actually ended up being shut down a while after I left. I am seeking therapy for non-related issues, however. Thank you for your concerns. Smiley face. That's all for today. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.